Thank you for joining me on this Facebook Live session. I'm glad to have you. I'll request you to leave any comments or any questions on the chat bar, on the comment section, and we can have these ones responded to you after this session or on the Q&A session that we're going to have on Thursday. So today we're just going to focus on a couple of things, especially during this season. As the year began, at church we were given the theme for the year 2020, and it was an exciting theme at that time when it was delivered. And the theme was enlarge the place of your tent peg. And as a business or even as a person, when you start thinking of enlarging, you're thinking of expanding, increasing your product portfolio, service offering, and all those different things, maybe expanding to different locations. And then the lockdown happens. So how then do you expand? How then do you enlarge the place of your tent peg when you're under a lockdown? It sounds like it's an impossible thing to do, but yes, we can discuss that and to see then how can we go about enlarging our territories, enlarging the place of our tent peg, even when we are under a lockdown. And a case in point that came to me when I was meditating on this is the story of Joseph. The story of Joseph in Egypt. For those who are not aware of the story, Pharaoh, who was the king of Egypt at the time, had a dream, and he failed to interpret the dream. And so he sought for someone who could interpret the dream and bring understanding to him on what the dream meant, because there were two versions of the dream and he did not understand what it meant. And so the long and the short is, if you want to read the whole story, actually, you can go to Genesis chapter 41, from verse 28 to 56 is where I'm going to focus on. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to read the Bible verse to you. You can read it in your time. But just to give context to the story, or just for those who are not familiar with the story, so Joseph goes and interprets the dream to Pharaoh. And the dream was, the summary of the dream was that there was going to be 7 years of plenty in Egypt, which were going to be immediately followed with 7 years of scarcity. And so Joseph had to advise the king of Egypt at the time, Pharaoh, on what to do. And when I look at that story, I came up with like a 5-point plan on the strategy that Pharaoh and the entire Egypt could follow to be able to be ready for the famine that was predicted to happen 7 years after the dream had happened. And when I looked at that, I could summarize the 5-point action plan and call it maybe the plan to rescue Egypt from famine in the next couple of years. And one of the first things that Joseph told Pharaoh is to look for a discerning man who is full of wisdom and put them in charge of the entire land of Egypt. That was the first action point. The second action point is to appoint commissioners over the land of Egypt. And the third action point was to collect a fifth, which is like 20% of the harvest of the land of Egypt during the years of plenty, the 7 years of plenty. They were supposed to collect them and put them in different cities around Egypt. And so it means they're going to store them up and keep them and not use them until the time when it was needed, which would be the famine season. And the fourth action point was that they were going to build reserves around the city, of course, to accommodate the grain that they're going to be collecting. And the fifth thing they were supposed to do then, when time comes, to distribute this grain as would have been needed. And as I looked at the 5-point plan, I thought, actually, it can apply to our businesses in this season and even after this season. So what happened is Joseph was appointed to be the man in charge of the project, if you can call it Operation Save the Country from Famine. But my question that I was pondering over was, where did Joseph put all the grain that came? Because the dream just came. The plan was just, he was just interpreting the dream. And then he's been given this noble task of rescuing the whole Egypt from famine. And I'm thinking, for him to have collected all this grain, it means one of the first things that he needed to do is to build an infrastructure for that. I'm assuming he built, because I was saying the grain was going to be stored in the cities, in the various cities in Egypt. They were not going to be stored in one place. As much as it was going to be under the authority of Pharaoh, the storage places were sparse, were like in different locations. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, that involved building infrastructure, building the granaries, or building, in our modern speak, building warehouses to accommodate the, the grain that was going to come. And that therefore means there was a lot of logistics involved, there was administration involved, there was just the entire infrastructure of making sure that the whole operation of collecting these things, the grains, was effective and efficient. I mean, in Uganda right now, we have the task force that is collecting all these contributions that people are making in all different kinds. And I'm thinking, if people are contributing different things, even if they were collecting grain, it was not one type of grain, which means there must have been a way of, saying this is where we are putting the maize grain, this is where we are putting the different types of grains. They're not just dumped together. So there must have been an organized system of receiving the grain, organizing the grain, and being able to track them so that maybe in the time of distribution, 7 years later, it will be easy to distribute. It will be easy to, to monitor, because remember, as much as they're going to accumulate it over 7 years, when they start using it during the famine time, they had to make sure that it spreads for 7 years, that the grain doesn't run out on the 3rd year or the 4th year. The grain had to be sufficient for 7 years. And so I was thinking there's some business lessons that you could draw from there. And one of the things that I could see is that expansion, growth, and sustainability happens when there are adequate systems. And that's why enlarging comes in. You have to have the systems in place. You have to have the infrastructure in place to be able to accommodate what you need to expand into. If it is in your service offering, if it is in your product offering, have you built the systems and the infrastructure to be able to accommodate the new things that you're going to bring in? And even in this season of business, those businesses that have good systems, I believe they'll be among those that will not just thrive, but will not just survive, but will actually thrive. It reminds me of Charles Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest. And so the people who already have right structures, I think have a better chance of surviving this season and actually thriving in the time post-lockdown. I don't know how long COVID is going to be around, so I may not say post-COVID, but post-lockdown, and when the doors are open again to the public. And I'm translating the same 5-point plan that Joseph had to a 5-point plan that we can implement in our businesses. So one of the things that I learned from Joseph is having a plan for the long term. Now, Joseph was given this task. He's now appointed the Prime Minister of Egypt. And so he has to plan not for 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years as our most business plans or strategic plans span, but he had to plan for 14 years, because he had to plan for the first 7 years of plenty, how to utilize his first 7 years resources, and the subsequent 7 years of scarcity. So I'm imagining if he had a business plan, it means he had to have a business plan spanning for 14 years. And also remember, there's that year, the year when he got the dream. So I think some commentators think actually he did a plan for 15 years. How many of our businesses have a 15-year plan? That's a rhetorical question. But that's the first thing that I saw. So we have to have plans for our businesses for the long term, because I'm assuming that we're building businesses that we are building businesses to last. So our plans should be for the long haul. The second thing that we have to do, that I learned from the story, is we have to hire and appoint the right people. Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great, talks about hiring the right people, but not just having the right people on the bus, but having the right people in the right seats in the bus. So during this season is the time people are talking about laying off, restructuring, and all those different things. Yes, it might be inevitable for your business to restructure depending on the industry and the sector you're in, But before or as you lay off staff, you have to check, do you have the right people in the bus? So that you're not firing the right people in the bus. But still, one of the options that I would encourage us to do before you fire, first of all, look at the new normal that your business is going to be and see, do you have the right people filling in those seats so that you're retaining the relevant people, the people who know what to do and how to do them. The current staff that you have, one of the things also that you can do is to train them to do different things, to cross-train them to be able to do more than one role. For example, we are talking about an economic downturn right now, but when I got my first job in 1999, that's like 21 years ago, there was actually an economic downturn. And I remember I was working at an Indian business, and they were restructuring. And so it came to a point where now me, who was the accountant, with the MD had a personal secretary who used to type his letters and answer the phone calls, book the appointments and everything. And so he had a choice of firing the secretary the secretary to the MD, and firing her, and then me, the accountant, do the secretarial work. The other option was to fire the accountant and the secretary to be able to do the accounting work. Now, between the two of us, it was easier for me to learn how to do the secretarial work on top of the accounting work. And interestingly, unfortunately, she was laid off. But now for me, who was retained, I learned additional skills of typewriting. And what was funny is, as much as I was using a computer for my accounting work, the MD was very particular that his letters had to be typed using a typewriter. I had never used a typewriter. I just graduated from campus then. I didn't know how to use a typewriter. But the good thing is we had what was called a word processor. So the word processor, you can use the interface of your your normal computer, but the printing will come out from the typewriter printer. So you'll get his letter looking like a typewritten letter. But now, for me who didn't know how to use a typewriter, I actually use the word processor interface. Now, that's an example of being taught to do something beyond your standard job description, but also the employee, of course, has to be willing to learn that. And fast forward now, 2020, one of the businesses that I have is Maua and More, which is located at Garden City. And as we are aware, most of the businesses have closed, and we also had to close. And in the first 14 days, it looked like 14 days are short. So we are going to go over the 14 days and go on. And I was mainly those first 14 days focusing on myself, learning new skills and everything. But when the president announced another 21 days, I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do for another 21 days of, nothing? And I still have to pay my staff. I thank God I haven't, laid off any of them. But I thought, how then do I keep them engaged? And one of them, because one of the good things about knowing your staff, you know, there are different competencies and things like that. And when we were having a staff retreat about 2 years ago, one of them mentioned that they really like writing. And so I thought, instead of me still, handling the social media and everything, why can't I empower her to actually take charge of that? And so I thought that you will be doing the posting on the Maua and More page, because if we acquire, people will think, we've closed completely. But if you keep having clients engaged online, then they'll know that, we are still around. And so she took on the role of actually posting a couple of posts, of course, being edited and tuned up a bit. But then now she's able to actually take on a new role, and the different staff were deployed in different ways. Another thing, the third thing apart from HR, is embracing the new normal. I think when collecting of a fifth of their harvest was introduced to the Egyptians, I don't think it was an easy thing for them to accept. Now you're giving 20% of your earnings, 20% of your harvest, like 20% of your earnings. And I'm imagining they were grumpy about it. They could have complained about it, but that became their new normal. 20%, pay it. It was not going anywhere. And even us right now during the lockdown, we found ourselves in new normal situations. But how are we handling or embracing our new normal? One of the things that I'm learning, at least for my business, is redefining my service offering. If I follow on the first example of Mo and Mo, we have, because of now engaging clients online, there are many people who are really requesting for deliveries to them. And of course, you have to see how to work within the law and still be able to attend to the clients. But for my training and consultancy work, as much as the office doors closed, I'm still able to do consultancy online as long as I have internet and, of course, and a computer and a phone. And some of the trainings that I had to do face-to-face, I'm glad that I got people who are willing to actually be trained online. And I've actually run a couple of Zoom training sessions over the last 3 weeks. And I'm thinking, that could be, that actually is going to be part of my new normal. Why? One of the participants in the trainings I had last week was from Iganga, and her feedback was, if you're having your training in your office in Kampala, I would not have attended. So I'm happy that you're actually offering an online option and I'm able to attend. And so I'm thinking all those people who say, can you come and have training in Arua, in Jinja, wherever, I can actually invite them to the training room via Zoom. About a year, last year actually I had someone coming for the trainings all the way from Congo. Every Saturday he will come for the training. So he'll travel at night to come join the training. But I'm seeing the borders are now open. Open how? Online. Open online, so I can use Zoom or any other training forum to actually include them. So that's the new normal. So for your business, what is the new normal for your business? How are you delivering your services to your client? How are you delivering your products to your clients? How is your distribution channel affected by this lockdown? And how then can you reposition yourself accordingly? Who are your customers? Where are your customers? Because when you know who your customers are, where they are, how they've been affected by this situation, then you'll find out how to reach out to your customers. If, like now, the market, your markets, of course, there are people who had physical markets, but now the markets have moved online. There's no longer Kampala Road and Ginger Road and all those streets. Now, the streets are online. The streets are on Facebook. The streets are on LinkedIn. The streets are on Twitter. The streets are on Instagram. Is your business in any of those channels? Because people are actually trading, people are actually shopping online. So if you're not online, if your business is not online, you're missing a lot. It was it CNN that I was listening to? Okay, I was reading, I think, and it was saying, as much as the clothes stores, some of them are closed, but people are actually buying a lot of clothes. Those who are in Zoom meetings and everything, so they're buying tops. Okay, they're not buying everything. They're buying tops because they want to, attend official Zoom meetings. So they're actually businesses that are still going on in the lockdown. The fourth thing that you need to have in place is a robust finance and operation system. Okay, I'm looking at Joseph when he declared it's supposed to be 20%. They had to have a system. Of course, they had a target. So in your finance and operations, you have to have targets. So they set targets. And the targets for them was 20% collections from every family for every year for the next 7 years. Now, for you to be able to make sure that people are doing that, you're on target, that they don't under collect for that period, it means that you have to have a system of record keeping, a system of accountability, a system of stock management, a system of, knowing who has delivered what and who has not delivered. Now, in our businesses, how are our systems able to accommodate the new normal? Okay, this time is a time where I've seen some of my clients and some of my friends who run businesses, as much as their shops are closed or their businesses are closed, they're using this time actually to streamline their operations. They're streamlining their operational manuals. Some people who didn't have any operational manuals are actually working on them now, because you don't have to be in a physical office to do your finance manual. So there are people who are reviewing their finance and procedures manual. There are people looking at the HR manuals. There are people who are looking, of course, at the contracts for their staff. There's a lot of things that you can do to improve your systems now. Don't let it was initially 14, 21, 35 days go to waste. There's a lot that you can do to clean house, improve your system, so that when the doors open again and it becomes so busy, it's very hard to remember to look at your operations manual review it when you have a client waiting for you. So this time is the time when you clean up your systems, dust up the documents that you've not looked at in a while, and make them relevant. There are some documents that, you know, they were done like 5 years ago and no one has looked at them to see, are they still relevant? And still review your systems to see, are they going to be relevant going forward? Because if they're not going to be relevant in the new normal, then you have to update that. Make sure that you have a system that, of course, I've said stock management. So in our businesses, if you're a stock heavy business, do you have enough stock when the doors open? Or you're going to start looking for stock at that time? If you have to, then how do you start booking those orders so that you have sufficient stock? At this time, I wouldn't advise you to have too much stock because you don't know how people's purchasing power is going to be. But how do you make sure you just have enough stock so that you're not losing opportunity to sell because you're running out of stock? How do you track your debtors? Even during the lockdown, you should know who owes you money, for how long have they owed you the money, how are you going to collect that money, because that goes and feeds into your cash flow projection that we're going to look at briefly. Your creditor management. As much as people are trying not to pay their creditors, but you really want to be in their good books in this season. Have conversations with them. If you cannot pay as per previously discussed schedule, how then do you discuss with them your payment schedule or reorganize your orders with them? And something that is very important as well is having your financial management dashboard. Have something, the way your car has a dashboard, have something that tells you where your business is going, how your business is performing, and the health status of your business. So you need to have a profit and loss statement that tells you, is your business growing or it is not growing? If it's profitable, it's growing. If it is making losses, of course, it's a reverse gear, figuratively speaking. Then you have to have, of course, an oil pressure indicator that tells you your level of indebtedness in your business. Of course, it reaches a place where most businesses, to expand to another level, they need debt. But then do you have healthy debt level, or you're having too much debt than you can accommodate in your business? It's time to review those things. It's also time, and the one key, very important thing that I'm going to focus on a bit later is a cash flow management system. Now, cash is king. Cash is key, and you have to make sure that you have a way of managing that, a system of managing that. And you know, I'm thinking at some point in verse 56, when the famine time came, Joseph opened the storehouses. And I'm thinking, I don't think when he opened the storehouses, the newest grain is what was issued. I'm assuming I'm an accountant by profession. So I'm assuming they use the FIFO method, first in, first out. But for you to do first in, first out, it means that you should have had a system of saying, this is what came in this period, and maybe they are marked by date or something like that, so that when the distribution starts, they were actually not distributing, they were selling. When the selling starts, you know you're selling the old stock first, because this is grain, you don't want it to go bad on you. So you're selling the old stock first and having the new stock, you know, staying longer, because remember, you have a 7-year journey to travel in that. And the fifth thing, which is the last thing for the action plan on your 5 action point, is a cash flow management system that you have to have that should be very, very robust. Cash is king. If you see during Joseph's time, what was king at that time is the grain. The grain was so precious that people bought the grain. After their money got finished, they couldn't buy anymore, but of course they still needed to eat. So what did they do? They sold their livestock. When they finished selling their livestock and they were still hungry, now they told Joseph, now we've sold our livestock, we've finished our cash, we've sold our livestock, now what do? We have land, can we give you the land? They sold their land in exchange for grain. Then their land got finished. Now what did they have remaining? Themselves, their bodies. They had to sell their bodies in exchange for grain. And that's what happens. When you don't have cash in your business, there are many businesses that go under, not because they're not profitable businesses, but just because the cash flow stopped. Cash flow is cash is the bloodline of your business. And so the way you look at the fuel you have in your car and project your journey is the same way you look at the cash that you have right now in your business and project how far can it take you. Can it take you for 3 months? Can it take you for 6 months? Can it take you for 12 months? Of course, that would be great. But start with the reality of the now. Start with the reality of the now. Look at all the cash that you have at your disposal. The cash that is liquid cash, the cash that, actual cash in your bank, the liquid cash that are in your like treasury bills and unit funds that you can, unit trust rather, that you can easily liquidate in a couple of days before you look at your property, land or things like that. So you start with the most liquid asset. And so for your cash flow management, of course, you will not use your fixed assets. You will look at your cash, the cash that you have available. Then project that against your obligations, against your expenditures, and you see how far will it stretch your expenditures. We're having a board meeting in one of the organizations, and we're saying the cash that we have right now, it can only take us so far. So we had to have this difficult conversation. Okay, we don't want to lay off staff, but then what percentage of their salary can we reduce so that we can stretch this money to as many months as possible? So if you don't do your cash flow projection, you might find, yes, you pay your staff their full salaries for 1 month and then you can't afford to pay them later on. So how do you manage your cash flow right now to make sure that it can stretch you for as far as possible? But that information and that exercise only works if you had a good record keeping system. So all these systems help you to work your business and plan your business for the long run. So the people in Egypt were property rich, but cash poor, grain poor in that case. And so in our businesses, if you are asset rich and you have no cash in your business, you may consider having to liquidate some of the assets that you don't need. If you have extra printers and you can do with 2 printers or 1 printer in your business and you have 5, you don't need all those ones. So when you've done your cash flow projection, look at the gaps, look at the months that you're going to be on the red, and think now, plan now what you're going to liquidate or which alternative sources of funds you're going to get to be able to cover for those deficits. You don't wait and you wake up and you don't have money. You plan now ahead. And of course, we advise that you have a 3-month rolling cash flow plan. So it's like you're always looking 3 months ahead and seeing how you're going to survive. And we see that Joseph, even in that time, in the midst of economic downturn in Egypt, he made a lot of wealth, okay? But those people who did have money, of course, sold themselves to that. And also in this season as well, there are businesses that have positioned themselves and have got opportunities that they've embraced, and actually their business is actually soaring and is growing. I think for each of us, we have to look in our businesses, review our business models, review our service offering, and see which are the opportunities available for us to take advantage of. There are many opportunities, and you being a child of God, of course, you have the extra advantage of the Holy Spirit inspiring you, and God himself, the creator of the universe, giving you the creativity that you need even to be relevant in this season, even to take advantage of the opportunities that are in this season. I think we're going to be discussing more of the details of the opportunities that are available in this season in the next couple of days. So I believe you're going to stay tuned. But what I'll conclude is by saying we have to look for how to strategically position our businesses, position ourselves, and even actually as business owners, one of the things you have to do is to reinvent yourself. Because when you reinvent yourself, you'll be able to also reinvent your business. So it starts with you, the leader. Remember, anointing flows from the top. It starts from you, the leader, and trickle down to the rest of your employees and your business processes. And what I'll ask us is to ask God to give us the same wisdom as he gave the sons of Issachar, to be able to discern the times, to be able to understand the times, to be able to see and seek the opportunities. It's one thing to see the opportunity, is another thing to seize the opportunity. So I pray you're going to seize the opportunities. And I'm going to leave us with Psalms 37, verse 19. I like the NLT, New Living Translation, New Living Translation version that says, they will not be disgraced in hard times, and even in famine, they will have more than enough. I pray that will be our portion, you and I. Thank you very much for joining this session, and look forward to having you joining us on our other live sessions that are going to be tomorrow and Wednesday on Facebook Live, and a Q&A session via Zoom is going to be there on Thursday. Thank you for listening and looking forward to reading your comments. God bless you, and may you thrive even in this season, because you are a child of the Most High God. God bless you.